You know, I tell people all the time that I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and I guess I kind of grew out in the 90s, but that's a different story. We won't go there, but I did. I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and you know, back then, things were just different than they are nowadays. The word hero was used more often, and it's well worth using it. You know, of course, now we all had our fictional heroes like Roy and Gene, Tex and Rex, Durango Kid, and Superman, Batman, and all them, but we had real heroes too, like Eisenhower, MacArthur, Mickey Mantle, Roger Maris, Willie Mays, John Glenn, John F. Kennedy. Yeah, you know, back then even president was a hero. Well, this next poem, it's about a hero of mine. And quite honestly, it took me a while to write this. And after I'd written it, I felt like I hadn't said enough about him. I wanted more people to know who he was. So I wrote a little introduction to the poem too, and I like to do it too. There's somewhat of a misconception that in order to be a cowboy, one must be born in the West. Yet some of the best cowboys I've ever known were born and raised east of the Mississippi River. This poem's in memory of one such cowboy, William Pete Allen. Mr. Pete, as we call him, was born and raised in the small community of Clovercroft, just outside Nashville, Tennessee. But believe me, Mr. Pete was indeed a cowboy, and more importantly, a damn good friend. Let me share with you the story of a cowboy I once knew. You can bet your boots and saddle the story tell is true. Mr. Pete was a real cowboy, even though he hailed from Tennessee. His specialty was helping others every time there was a need. I couldn't list a cowboy, Mr. Pete showed how to pull a cinch. All the time he saw him pitching hay because the neighbor was in a pinch. He taught so many to ride a horse, and so many he taught to rope. There's a standing rule around his place, be no alcohol or dope. Oh, now Pete, he weren't an angel. He had his wilder days, and if he ever started with the stories, he'd be there for a stay. I never knew a man liked to talk as much as Mr. Pete did, but darn it, his stories get so interesting you really glad he did. He'd tell tales about horses and cattle, or some cowboy he once knew. If you ever had screwed up, he'd tell a tale on you. He had stories when he was a youngster and somebody's rodeo days. Rest assured, he'd tell you all about it if a rodeo ever wants to pay. I feel like I could talk forever on this cowboy I once knew. We lost Mr. Pete one November, and that's a story too. I've never known a person whose funeral drew such a crowd. It was because he touched all their lives, and each person very proud. Like all funerals, there was some that spoke, and we had a prayer or two. I never saw so many grown men cry. Oh yes, I teared up too. After the services, we headed to the gravesite. I stopped and looked around. People were walking 12 abreast. The end of the line I never found. A stranger may have thought it was a dignitary, a president, governor, or such, but Mr. Pete was a simple cowboy. The cowboy we all love so much. Second thought, he was a dignitary, a proclaimed mayor of Clovercroft. Now he's up there telling St. Peter's stories and pitching hay in heaven's loft. Thank y'all.